Visualize the situation with me. Your day is starting off as it normally would. You're donning your monk robes before you walk outside your pristine temple on top of a snow-capped mountain overlooking a serene village down below. You plan to perform a walking meditation for 100 miles before returning to the temple for your early breakfast consisting of fruits, sunshine, and the enlightenment of the universe. It's only 7 a.m., and you have the whole day ahead of you. Now, if your day does not normally start off like this, do not worry, because most of us do not have the fortunate ability to live so intimately in the present. Or do we? Hi, my name is Anu Kumar.
And I'm Madeline MacArthur.
And this is the Brain Rules Podcast. So the situation I just previously described is typically what comes to mind of many people when they think about meditation. That meditation is this activity that can only be performed in complete solitude outside of your modern lifestyle.
Or that people have to completely empty their minds of any distractions, emotions, or thoughts, and that they have to have this blank void where everything turns to nothing.
So if sitting on a snow-capped mountaintop in scarlet and golden robes, pondering the secrets of the universe isn't an accurate depiction of meditation, what exactly is? So meditation is a technique where you focus on attaining a specific state of consciousness. It typically focuses on being more mindful or being more aware of being in the present moment instead of having your thoughts pulled in every different direction. I know I can speak from personal experience that sometimes I let personal stressors of life prevent me from being my best self mentally, and I'm not alone. Many people experience this as well. So this is especially true for individuals experiencing any sort of mental illness like depression, anxiety, PTSD, or what have you.
So if sitting completely devoid of all thoughts isn't right for you, that's okay. I know if I was told to sit silently for an hour every day, I would spend that hour napping instead of reflecting on my life. Meditation is an umbrella term that comes in a variety of forms that can help you focus on your relaxed state of being. And this can be achieved through guided meditation, mantra meditation, mindfulness meditation, Tai Chi, or yoga. A quick explanation about each of these types of meditations. Guided meditation is that form of meditation where you form mental images of places or situations you find relaxing. You try to use as many senses as possible, such as smells, sights, sounds, and textures. You may be led through this process by a guide or a teacher.
So this is a really popular meditation type, and it's also the grounds for a lot of meditation apps. Because when people typically start meditating, most people don't have access to some sort of tutor or teacher that can help them start, and they probably don't have any previous experience with meditation. So guided meditations are an easy way to get into things if you haven't had any experience before. And like I said, there's a bunch of apps available, and you can also find guided meditations on places like YouTube.
For sure. And one really awesome app that I have used before is Headspace. We are not sponsored by them, but it's a really cool, easy app where you can meditate for 10 minutes a day, and it's free. And it's really great if you want to try it out. Anyway, continuing on, another form of meditation is mantra meditation, and this is a type of meditation where you silently repeat a calming word, thought, or phrase that can help prevent distracting thoughts. For example, you could repeat the phrase, "I am enough," which I think is really great. The next type of meditation is mindfulness meditation. And this type of meditation is based on being mindful or having increased awareness and acceptance of living in the present moment. This type of meditation forces you to broaden your conscious awareness. You can observe your thoughts and emotions, but let them pass without judgment. Tai Chi is another form of meditation that is known as a form of gentle Chinese martial arts. With this form of meditation, you engage your entire physical body by performing a self-paced series of postures or movements in a slow, graceful manner while practicing deep breathing. Finally, the most famous form of meditation we all know about is, of course, yoga. With this form of meditation, you perform a series of postures and controlled breathing exercises to promote a more flexible body and a calm mind. As you move through poses that require balance and concentration, you're encouraged to focus less on your busy day and more on the moment.
I know, especially whenever you first start off doing yoga, you really have to pay attention and focus to your body positioning and moving with your breath. Another thing that I wanted to add on to the mantra meditation So like you mentioned, like one of the phrases could be like "I am enough,"
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of depictions of mantra meditation, I feel like people are familiar with, is reciting the word Om, and so like that is really popular in Southeast Asian culture, East Asian culture, and has various meanings, but a lot of like the most consistent meaning seems to be like the sacred sound of the universe. So that is like, especially like in Hinduism, it's believed that like when the universe was created, that was the first sound.
That's amazing. Yeah. Now that I know what that means, that I'm not gonna lie, it sounded kind of silly when people just be like, "Oh, I'm sitting around," not. It's like more of a sound, I guess, in my mind.
Yeah. Huh. And then another one that a lot of people use is the syllable ah, and that's because that sound is really present in a lot of different religions' depiction of their version of a higher power or like a god, like an overpowering, I don't want to say overpowering god, an all-powerful god.
All-powerful god, that's, yeah.
Yeah. And so, like, we have, like, that syllable in the word God, because even though it's, like, spelled with an O, it still has that ah sound. Or, like, Krishna is, like, a depiction in Hinduism, or Allah. So, like, that kind of, like, brings out, like, the spiritual side of it, but it doesn't have to be just a spiritual or religious practice.
Amazing.
So that's, like, that's kind of, like, the flip side to meditation. You don't have to have a religious tie to it, because your mantra could be something like Om, and you not have a connection to Hinduism or any like East Asian religion.
Yeah.
You could just be like, I am one with the universe, or I am enough, or
that's
something
beautiful.
Like that. So yeah,
amazing.
So yeah, that was like a little fun fact of the day. So getting more into the neuroscience of meditation. We had a lot of sources stacked up, but we did not want this episode to be like 45 minutes long.
Trust me, we could have gone for possibly hours just talking about the research behind meditation and neuroscience. It's fascinating.
We might end up doing this as like a two-part series, just like one part, which is this episode, just like introducing meditation and like the different techniques and all that sort of stuff, and then maybe like the second part more focusing on research, but we'll see. But yeah, one of the studies that I wanted to highlight was how meditation can influence brain waves. So there is actual scientific merit behind the claims of meditation. So a 2009 study published in the Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine explored the alteration of brainwaves while meditating in different people. So this study was conducted at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology using EEG, or electroencephalography. So electroencephalography caps to measure the waves. So let's define brainwaves and EEG for a second. So your brain contains billions and billions of nerve cells, or neurons, that talk to each other through chemical and electrical properties. So we often talk about the chemical properties like neurotransmitters, hormones, all that kind of stuff. But these chemical transports are initiated by depolarization of a neuron. So what do I mean by depolarization? So depolarization means that the negative electrical charge on the inside of the neuron moves towards a neutral charge, so like meaning it does not have a net negative charge. So this causes an action potential. So these action potentials are what allow the neurons to transmit information to each other. So our neurons produce these electrical signals, right? But they are really minuscule. Like these electrical signals are within millivolts. So that's really small compared to electricity you'll get when you plug something into an electrical outlet. So these electrical signals form patterns, and these patterns are called brain waves. So in an EEG experiment, small electrodes are non-invasively attached to various parts of a person's head. So no one's like drilling anything into your skull. It's just an electrode that's placed on the surface of your head. So most of the time, there's this compressive like cap, think of like a swimmer's cap, with electrodes attached to it. And you can just slip the cap over your head. So the electrodes aren't there to shock you, but simply read the signals that they detect from your brain. They amplify them and they send them to a computer to further analyze the patterns. So the Mayfield Clinic's page on EEG is very informative, and this is where we've pulled our information from this portion of the podcast. So going back to the study, this press release of the study was published online at Science Daily, and they note that the individuals who meditated practiced a specific type of meditation called a chem meditation. So this is a type of mantra meditation, as Madeline mentioned before. So a group of participants were asked to close their eyes and meditate for 20 minutes and then just rest for 20 minutes. So during meditation, theta waves were the most present in the front and middle parts of the brain. So one of the researchers postulated that these waves likely came from relaxed attention. They also found that alpha waves were more present in the back part of the brain, or the most posterior part, where researchers say could be associated with monitoring other mental processes. So they measured how calm a person was by the signals projected to the lower parts of the brain. So like our innermost structures located in the cortex, and not necessarily structures like the prefrontal cortex. So theta and alpha waves are different from delta waves, which are associated with sleep cycles. So this is just kind of furthering the evidence that meditation isn't exactly the same as sleeping. And we can see that by the production of different brain waves during these different processes. So you can find more about these waves on the article Brain Waves and Meditation posted on Science Daily.
That's awesome. Did the article say anything about like if the brainwaves might be a little different, if there are different types of meditation?
I feel like that's something that you could be expected, but that research article didn't particularly delve into it.
That would be really cool when and if they explore that idea.
Yeah.
Awesome. So moving on to something that's connected to meditation, definitely, because it's meditation. You can consider it self-care, and I personally find this topic of self-care very interesting because it's become something of a fad, if you will, in today's society, which is like great. But sometimes the idea of self-care and treat yourself culture can kind of get the line can get blurry. So kind of an abrupt transition, but talking about this buzzword of self-care, I'm sure we all have heard the phrase treat yourself, which was coined by the iconic show Parks and Recreation, of which I am a huge fan. Anyway, if you don't know this phrase or haven't seen Parks and Rec, which you really should because it's amazing, two of the main characters on the show, Donna and Tom, have a day once a year where they treat themselves to all the luxuries life has to offer, such as clothes, massages, mimosas, etc. This self-care culture has become more of a treat yourself culture where we focus less on what we're doing to actually take care of ourselves and better ourselves and more on putting a band-aid on our problems, and such as taking a bubble bath to make our worries go away for a hot sec.
Right, and so this kind of escapism is really nice every once in a while, but packaging that as self-care can be very misleading. And so this is kind of like getting into the topic of like self-care being on the same par as meditation, which like it can be, but when you're talking about self-care in a sense where it's just more of like delving into the luxuries of life instead of actually taking care of things that need to get done, then it becomes more of like this cultural myth that meditation could be a form of self-care. But like bubble baths are nice and they're a nice way to de-stress, but they won't do your homework for you or clean your apartment or pay your bills.
I love that line. Bubble baths will not clean your apartment. So I want to talk about an article I read recently that I sent to Anu and we both loved.
Yes.
It's called This is What Self-Care Really Means, because it is not all salt baths and chocolate cake. And this article is fantastic. If you have time after the podcast, please go read it. It's an article. Basically, the article talks about this modern idea of self-care and how it's actually unhealthy for us to put Band-Aids on our problems by eating too much chocolate cake or choosing to not do that thing that we keep putting off because, treat yourself. What this article makes clear is that treating yourself is not the same as self-care. The article starts with the line, self-care is often a very unbeautiful thing. Self-care is doing your laundry because you know you have the time now and you need clean clothes. Self-care is going to the gym even if you aren't going to have a great workout while you're there. Another great quote is, true self-care is not salt baths and chocolate cake. It is taking the choice to build a life that you don't need to regularly escape from, which I feel like with meditation, you're not necessarily escaping.
Yeah.
You're just putting yourself in that present moment, and you're being mindful of that moment.
Mm-hmm. It's essentially basically what self-care needs to be, is like assessing the situation and figuring out, what is happening right now. Is there something I need to be doing? Is there something that is keeping me from wanting to do this? Is there a reason why I'm procrastinating this, or that I feel a certain way? So meditation definitely is an underutilized form of self-care, because like I said earlier, sometimes we just get so caught up in all these different things that, is happening in life. So I know I'm guilty of that. Like sometimes I'll just be kind of overwhelmed by school, and I'll forget, I've got to make sure that I, take care of myself and take care of my belongings, and making sure, everything is where it needs to be.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah.
So we can't really rely on someone else to hold our hand and tell us what we should do that will benefit our lives in the long run. Sometimes we have to parent ourselves and look ahead and know what is right to do for our future selves. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't want you to think that I'm telling you that you're doing self-care wrong. Everyone has their own way of doing self-care. Bubble baths are amazing, and chocolate cake is wonderfully delicious.
Oh, it's so good.
Keep eating the chocolate cake. Just don't let it become the escape from your life. Think bigger and have those hard conversations with yourself and ask, okay, self, why do I need to escape my life right now with this chocolate cake? Or is this cake a really treat yourself cake, or a self-care cake? Is there something else I could be doing to help my future self instead of sitting in a bubble bath? Maybe I could be spending that time getting ahead on some important task. So final quote from the article, which I think sums up everything we've been saying really well, is self-care is deciding how much of your anxiety comes from not actualizing your latent potential, and how much comes from the way you were being trained to think before you even knew what was happening.
Right, and that is especially a product of like just classical conditioning, bringing it back to basic psychology. If you have gotten like stressed before about a certain situation, like maybe like paying your bills or something, mm-hmm. or just cleaning your apartment. So like as soon as you see, the dirty clothes start to pile up, you're like, man, I am totally thinking of like all these negative times associated with this. I mean, you're not consciously saying this to yourself, but you're feeling all of these negative emotions associated with it. So it's like, well, the only way to not feel that is to not take care of it, and then it becomes like a slippery slope. So the thing would be to just, actually take care of it, mm-hmm. even though that's sometimes easier said than done.
Oh, for sure.
And this also like references some things we've talked about in previous podcasts, like the Anslin-Reichland model of self-control, where it's like, we get the most, I don't want to say like, it's not pleasure, reinforcement. We get the most reinforcement from doing a short-term task than we do from like a long-term task. Mm-hmm. So it's like you could always avoid putting away your laundry now, and you'll feel like, I'm totally fine with, not doing this, versus you're less likely to go through the uncomfortableness of putting away your laundry or do whatever, and then experience that even greater reinforcement after you're done, that feeling of, mm-hmm. I got something done, my apartment is clean, or I paid these bills, or anything like that. So it's definitely trying to retrain yourself behaviorally to do this, because, you'd be surprised at how many of us do this on a constant basis. I guess like now I would want to like talk about kind of like our experience with meditation, like kind of like how we got into it, or like how mm-hmm. we're experiencing that now. And just kind of like, I don't know, give her like our own personal touch to the end of the episode.
Our journeys.
Yes.
Our meditation journeys. So mine definitely started about a year ago. I was training for, I mentioned the half marathon I ran last year. I was training for that, and what I would do is I would go out and run in the morning, and then I would come back and I would do my stretches. And while I was doing my stretches, I would put like some like soft jazz on or something. I would jazz. Like, exactly, I love it too. I would just put it on, and I'd just be doing my stretches, and I wouldn't be thinking about anything except the stretches, and I didn't realize it was meditation. Mm-hmm. I kind of just accidentally fell into it. Yeah. And it turned out to be great. After going on a hard run where I was like having to more mentally push myself than physically push myself, because as any runner knows, it's more of a mental game than it is a physical game. So after pushing myself, for however long I was running, and then coming back and having that time to just have a quiet mind, it was great. So even for anyone out there who is like, oh, I don't have any time, like I go work out in the gym, and then I have to go home and do homework. Maybe like during your stretches, instead of listening to some music, just be quiet. Listen to some quiet, or listen to soft jazz, and like kind of have that time for a quiet mind. It might be helpful.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I got into meditation quite a while ago. I was about maybe 13 or 14. Whenever,
oh wow!
Yeah, whenever I actually got interested in it, I was interested in learning more about Buddhism, and I kind of stumbled upon meditation as a byproduct of that. I mean, the whole concept of Buddhism came about with Siddhartha literally just meditating for days and days and days. So I mean, it's a very central part of the belief. And I just started doing just silent meditations where I would just focus on my breath for maybe 5 or so minutes, and then it would get to the point where sometimes I could go for literally 30 minutes. But this was during high school, whenever I had more of a known structure to my schedule every single day. And I know especially getting into college, it's been a little bit more difficult for me to keep up that meditation schedule. So now I'm kind of back down to 5 to 10 minutes, just whenever I can. But yeah, I actually read a book called Healthy Brain, Happy Life, which I tell Madeline about literally all the time. It's written by Dr. Wendy Suzuki. She is a professor up at the New York University Center for Neuroscience. And she, in her book, she wrote a section about meditation and mindfulness and how she kind of got into it. And she talked about how she went to this workout class, and then as part of the class, towards the very end, they would do 5 or 10 minute meditation sessions to kind of reflect on the exercise routine that they did, or just listening to their bodies, if they're hungry, if they're thirsty, what they would need to do to take care of themselves afterwards. And then so I started implementing that after my workouts, because sometimes I will go to the gym and just have really what I feel are really terrible workouts. So I'm just you know what, it's all right. And then so afterwards I'll do my stretches and just sit for 5 or 10 minutes and just kind of meditate. Sometimes I'll put on just light orchestra music, because I know it's the complete opposite type of music than what I listen to while I'm working out, because it's usually really loud and fast paced. And so that's a really great way to kind of switch mindsets as well. And it's also just a great way to de-stress, because you put yourself through stress daily, no matter how much or how little stress it is. You're always experiencing stress from just a lifestyle standpoint and from a neurological standpoint, so I mean, you have to give your brain time to relax and de-stress, consciously de-stress, because then you start talking about you start getting into acute versus chronic stress. And acute stress is great. It's the short bursts of stress that motivate you to get things done. But then chronic stress, that's when it starts to become debilitating. You start losing sleep, you start just having all of these different health issues if it becomes too long in the making. So that's kind of I'm still struggling with the whole keeping an actual schedule, but we're on that. We're working on that.
And I feel one thing that people get bogged down when it comes to meditation is it needs to be this very stringent thing where they do it every day for a certain amount of time, at this time, every day. And I feel working out is the same way, but it's okay if it's a little bit more relaxed, a little bit just go with the flow, oh, I found 10 minutes today, and I just kind of sat down, and I was able to do meditation in whatever way I chose, whether it be a mantra or mindfulness. It doesn't have to be so strict. Yeah, I guess it can kind of just go with the flow, and that's what I think is so beautiful and awesome about meditation.
Yeah, definitely. I know I definitely thought that, especially being introduced to meditation through Buddhism, it was just my whole concept originally was just like, you have to find a silent place to sit down for like 45 minutes, and you have to have a successful meditation session, just like you can't have your thoughts wandering. And that's not exactly the case, because like it is with like any behavior, you have to train yourself to like be accustomed to that, and it takes practice. The first time you meditate, it's probably not going to be the best meditation session, but the fact that you tried to get yourself to be more aware of what you're thinking of and where your thoughts are being pulled towards, that is already a huge success, is the fact that you're starting that journey. So yeah, and it also kind of plays into the fact that we talk a little bit about like brain health, and these are the different things that are going on in your brain, but we haven't really hit on a lot of stuff in terms of just like taking care of yourself like psychologically. Because you'd be surprised that if you're eating right and you have a great sleep schedule and all this sort of stuff, how like better your brain could work if you just like focused on like gratitude and happiness and being in the present moment. So like neuroscience is a very like awesome field for that, because it's like a marriage of like this like biology and also psychology and lifestyle thing that could like benefit a lot of people. You don't have to be neuroscience students or neuroscientists to like benefit from that.
For sure. And I mean, that's also like the goal of this podcast is to help bring neuroscience to the masses.
While it's not like a brand new field, it's definitely a really fast growing field recently.
It's growing in leaps and bounds.
Yes. So whatever way we can contribute to that, whether it's just like getting the public to know a little bit more about like meditation and telling you guys a little bit about brain waves, or if it's just like about self-care and sitting you down and saying like you need to have this conversation with yourself. It's just part of growing up and being an adult, but also just like making sure you're taking care of yourself, which I feel like is a very underrated skill. Right now, because we tend to have a culture of everything has got to get done now. Go all the time.
No, we need healthy brains. We need healthy, happy brains that we can relax and we can meditate and we can be like, all right, I'm gonna take care of myself, take care of my brain by taking time for it. Take time for your brain.
Yeah, exactly. Make time for your brain. Yeah, so that concludes this episode of the Brain Rules podcast. If you like what you heard, please share this episode with a friend. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the Daily Beacon podcast on SoundCloud, iTunes, or your stock podcast app. And be sure to check back for episodes every other week.
We hope that you learned something new today, and we'll see you next time.